Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go.
Hey, Enchilada Nation, excited about our topic today. As you are well aware, last week we talked to Louis Hamner and really got talking about leadership. And particularly, one of the things he said was leader equals pathfinder. And I've been putting a lot of thought into that specific phrase of being a great leader is helping people find the right path, or creating that path to a common goal, or a goal in which they're winning and you're winning, and then identifying the people that should be on that path with you. As you'll find that we're going to stay focused on the topic of leadership over the next several episodes for a couple of reasons. One, I'm having a lot of people raise their hand in my world that are interested in growing their leadership. And two, this is something that I think is really important, particularly in my own world, as we continue to expand our businesses, open new businesses, and bringing leaders within my organization to the next level is growing their leadership, which if any of you have read the 5 levels of leadership, you know that the 5th level of leadership is really creating that next layer or level of leaders. So a leader leading someone within a team to a result is great, but a leader leading leaders who then lead other people is really the pinnacle of leadership, where we're having a much bigger impact on a broader base of people that way. And it's been interesting to me, the skill set it takes to be a great self-leader and self-leadership is different. There's some commonalities, but it's different than the skill set you need to lead others. And then it's a completely different skill set, or maybe I shouldn't say it's a different skill set, but it's another layer of skill sets where you become a leader to other leaders. And it's been a fun, ongoing journey on multiple levels. And ultimately, I found personally, you never graduate from one level to the next. For example, as I run several companies right now, I'm responsible in all 3 of those categories. Number one is I can't give up on my self-leadership. In fact, I've got to increase my own self-leadership to make sure that I'm being the person that my people need me to be. I need to manage my time better. I need to hold myself accountable to the most important things within each of those organizations. Next, I need to lead my direct reports. I am their direct leader, make sure that I'm showing up in a high way for those leaders. And then third, I need to really be aware of who are those up and coming talented people within my world that deserve the next leadership opportunity, and the ones that have been given a leadership opportunity within my world, am I giving them the tools, the direction, the skill to be able to lead other people within my organization to the extent and to the level as if I was leading them myself. And the truth of the matter is, if you do a great job leading that next layer of leadership, they'll actually do a better job of leading those people than you. So one thing that really has stuck out in my mind over the years in regards to leadership is there's really 2 sides, 2 broad categories to leadership. And I have found that most leaders, myself included, tend to have a stronger natural skill set in one of these 2 categories, and the other one tends to need a little bit of extra work, but it cannot be ignored. What those 2 sides are is there's a energy and charismatic side of leadership, of that ability to connect with someone and get excited about their cause and the energy that they create. And then there's the accountability side of leadership, of really establishing the vision of where we're going and working it backwards to the specific benchmarks and lead measures that must be accomplished to progress us forward towards that goal, and the daily, weekly accountability to those lead measures with the expectation that it's going to get us to that end goal. So think about either your own leadership or people in your world that have been a leader to you, and maybe you make a list of 2, 3, 4, 5 of them and ask yourself the question, that specific leader, was their natural tendency more to that charismatic energy attractor part of leadership, or did they show up more as that accountable vision, specifically how are we going to measure the results on a day-to-day basis piece of leadership? Now, in my mind, I've seen leaders in both categories. So for example, that charismatic, really high energy, a really attractable personality. I've seen leaders that tend to have that be their primary trait of leadership. And I've seen some of those people both succeed at a high level in leadership. And I've also seen people fail in leadership, with that being their natural number one trait. And it's the exact same for the accountability side. The point I'm making is both of those categories are really important for strong leadership. And recognizing which one is you're more naturally inclined for, or that comes more naturally for you, is really important. So you can say, it takes me less energy to be this. How do I refine that skill easily? But I cannot forget the other side of that equation and bring that into the measure as well. I tend to be more naturally inclined to that energy, charisma, excitement, piece. And that's one of the things I love about getting in front of a group of people and casting that vision and getting people excited and rallied around it. And one of the things I had to learn earlier on in my career was, well, okay, I can get people on board with where we're going, but if I get them all on a boat and say, let's go, we're going somewhere fun, this is going to be fun, let's all get in this boat, and all we do is row in circles, after a while, those people on the boat are, number one, it's going to discredit me as a leader, and two, they're going to start getting off that boat and going to find another boat that's actually taking them somewhere. And that's where, and on the other side of that, if I was on that boat by myself and had a really good regiment of exactly what we were going to do, when we were going to row the boat, who was going to do what shift, who was going to do the right side, who was going to do the left side, so they're equally balanced, I could have all of that in place ready to measure it. But if I don't have people on the boat, we're also not going to go anywhere. We might not be spinning in circles, but we're making equal amount of progress forward. So the idea behind this is recognizing which one you're most naturally inclined for, and then really bringing in that other piece. So for me, one of the books that really had a huge impact on me was called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. The whole idea of we can create all these goals, and a lot of us are really good at putting together business plans and goals now. But the question becomes is, how good are we really at executing on the goals? And ultimately, executing on the end game really is a measure of how good are we executing the small daily activities that lead to the end result. The 4 Disciplines of Execution was a huge aha moment for me, recognizing that my charisma alone was not going to lead a team to success, nor myself to success, but I had to keep that in my world to attract people in. And at the same time, I had to get better at identifying the specific activities and then holding people accountable, which are 2 separate things. One is, are we measuring the right activity, and do we have confidence that by doing this activity, the end result will show up? And once that is done, do I have the right people in place that then can execute on those goals? I remember I was at a real estate conference several years ago, and there were literally 1,000 people in the room that all paid to be there. And the presenter said something within the first couple minutes of the meeting that caught my attention, but caught my attention so deeply that I went internal and did nothing but for the next hour think on that one statement and missed everything else this person said, which I'm sure was all phenomenal. But this was a really important lesson for me to learn. And the thing that he said was, talent seeks accountability. Now, the reason this was important to me is in that moment, I was like, well, I'm a talented guy. I got all this energy. I'm making some progress. I'm succeeding to some certain extent in my world. But at that moment, I didn't love accountability. In fact, I fought accountability. And so as I looked at that, I said, that statement cannot be true. Here I am, I'm a talented guy, yet I hate accountability. So this person said talent actually looks for accountability. And in my mind, I'm saying, nope, I'm talent and I hate accountability. And what I ultimately learned in that moment of thinking through it on my own was, do I really hate accountability, or do I hate other people holding me accountable to things that are not important to me? Because actually I'm a very disciplined person, and discipline has showed up in my life in a lot of different ways. But every time I embraced the new discipline, a new habit, it was purely because it got me in the direction of a better version of myself that was important to me. And so if it was a rule or a discipline or an activity in which I saw a better version of me on the other side, I would embrace that activity and want to be held accountable, both from a self-accountability standpoint and Also encouraging other leaders, people I looked up to and respected, to hold me accountable to that, because I saw it as a need, not a want, to get me to that next level. And so I do agree with that statement that a talented person does seek accountability. One of the things we fail to do in regards to accountability is we don't tie both a positive and a negative emotion to either a positive outcome or a negative outcome of achieving that goal. If we get better at that, for example, if you set an income goal for 2022, you should take a minute and say, what is that going to mean for me and my family? How am I going to feel at the end of the year when I look at my taxes and I made this amount of money? And what does that do for my family? Where am I going to spend that money? What investment properties am I going to buy? How am I going to feel inside and actually live that experience beforehand? And then right after that, almost take it away as if it didn't happen, and ask yourself, how does it feel now, knowing that that did not happen, that I had to tell my kids we weren't going to Disneyland or on that trip, and creating that negative emotion around it to determine, am I writing this goal down, or is this activity on paper, does it look like it's important to me, but I haven't really decided that I see a better version of myself, and that becomes more important than the obstacles that may stand in my way from achieving that. Let's flip back to the charismatic, energetic side of leadership. John Maxwell, who's one of the greatest leaders and thought leaders in regards to leadership, whose books are just incredible that I continue to read and enjoy. He defines leadership as influence and nothing more and nothing less. Leadership is influence and nothing more and nothing less. And I think someone that's really heavy on that charismatic energy side, you can have an initial influence on somebody, but what about a lasting influence on somebody? So if a really charismatic leader can influence people to get on the boat, but doesn't have the longevity of influence to keep them on the boat, then there is a gap in that leadership. Because, for example, the idea of getting on a boat or a ship or a business going somewhere and achieving a goal, again, on paper and visually, is really exciting to people. And at the moment, in that moment of getting excited about it, they're not thinking about the hard things and challenges that will happen within their role to accomplish that goal. They may get on the boat, and once they get the oar in the hand and start getting a blister on their hand, might be like, whoa, 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 I'm out of here. No one told me about the blisters. A great leader could get them on the boat or in the company, in the role, and continue to influence them, because every single role within every single company has challenges and hard things with that role within the organization. And if they don't see the importance of their role, their activities, their specific goals in that role to the greater good of the organization, that little blister on their hand or that little challenge that makes them go home and I'd be like, man, today was a hard day, is going to actually pull them away from the overall goal of the organization, if that charismatic leader doesn't have a lasting influence on them to keep them engaged on the goal. So one of the things that I would like to challenge you to do as a result of this conversation today is evaluate your own leadership. And many of you find yourself in the same category that I do, where you're actually responsible for three layers of leadership: self-leadership, leading other people, and leading leaders. And I would ask yourself the question, and you may need to look back, because a lot of you may be pretty balanced leaders now, but I would look back and say, in the early onset or the youthfulness of my leadership, did I show up more on the accountability side of being able to get clarity on the specific activities that need to be done and holding accountable and measuring those results? Or am I more naturally inclined for the charismatic, energetic, vision, energy side of leadership? Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the majority of entrepreneurs tend to fall on that charismatic energy side. And if you feel burnt out in leadership, where you've been able to get people onto your team or into your organization, and they're all excited, and you're telling everyone how talented these people are, and you're going to crush it, and then within 6 months, 8 months, a year, they start getting disgruntled and unhappy in their position, and you walk over to their computer and they've actually got Indeed up looking at different job opportunities, and you're asking yourself the question, how is it that this person isn't excited about my organization anymore? it's probably because you're giving so much energy to the charismatic side of leadership that you haven't nurtured the skills on that, tying the daily activities to the greater vision. And within that vision, do they see a better version of themselves? And that is a skill set you can learn. And the truth of the matter is, whichever your answer is, of whichever one you're more naturally inclined for, the great news is this, is if you recognize it and identify it, which the other side of the equation is a skill set that can be learned. It can be and should be learned. And again, this is an ongoing process, something that I'm working on a day-to-day basis. So for that reason, we're going to stay focused on leadership over the next several episodes. I've got some incredible leaders coming on. I've identified specific leaders that I'm finding what I believe to be their leadership superpower. And I'm going to bring them to the table to have those conversations. But today I wanted to do this solo cast to prep you for those conversations. And I think those conversations will be more impactful for you as you have a better clarity of where you're at in your own leadership journey now. Celebrate what you've done to get to the point you're at, but also be very real with yourself and identify that leadership gap that must be bridged for you to get to the next level. And a lot of times as leaders, if we're not progressing our companies to the goal or to the level we want to get, it's very easy for us to get frustrated and blame the people that we're leading, when in reality, it's really could be a result of not being a strong enough leader for your people. Over my career, I've identified that anytime there's friction within my company or something that doesn't seem to be working right, or we're not hitting our goals, the old leadership version of me would instantly want to blame people. Who's not doing their job? Who's not showing up? Who's not committed to getting things done? Who's dropping the ball? When a better version of my leadership takes myself through this process, because my knee-jerk reaction still is to ask who's missing the mark here. So I always go through these 4 steps identifying, and I'd encourage you as I walk through these 4 steps, think of a point of friction in your business. Am I not generating enough leads? Is the customer service not showing up the way it needs to show up? And this can happen on a personal level too. Anywhere you're feeling friction in your life, I would ask these questions. Number 1 is, have I identified a clear procedure or standard that is written that leads to that result? Number 2 is, have I trained the appropriate people within my organization on that standard and that procedure to a point that they understand exactly what needs to be done? Number 3 is, am I showing up as the leader that this person needs, that's being influenced and inspired daily to accomplish those tasks and hit the goals, and helping them see how the accomplishment of that activity plays into the greater good of the organization? And then, only then, if I could say, yes, we've got standards and procedures that are clearly written. Yes, I have taken the time to train my people to the extent they need to be trained. Yes, I am showing up as a leader and having the weekly accountability conversations and keeping them tied, their personal goals tied to the day-to-day activities. Then and only then do I earn the right to say, do I have the right person on the bus? Or notice that is the 4th step now for me, is to identify, do I have the right people inside of my organization? Where the majority of us want to do that exact opposite, where we instantly, when there's friction and a problem within our organization, start questioning whether we have the right people on the bus. When normally the problem either is we don't have the systems and standards, we have not trained our people to it, we are not being the leader on a day-to-day basis that our people need. And then it's, do I have the right people on the bus? Leadership, to me, is one of the most important things that we can be talking about as the Enchilada Nation because of this. Think about any incredible feat that has ever been done in the world, whether it's a war won, whether it's creating an incredible technology, whether it's building a business from scratch. None of those things, nothing in the history of man has ever happened without leadership. And I would dare to say that nothing that's going to make the history books in the future is ever going to be done without somebody showing up as a phenomenal leader. So if any of us have the inclination to have a massive impact on our own lives and the lives of the people around us, we must take our leadership to the next level. And so I'm really excited about having this conversation with you, this ongoing conversation with you over the next several weeks. Let's grow our leadership together. And don't forget, go live life on your terms.